Welcome back. Today 1966, something remarkable was quietly moving through the pockets and purses of American citizens, something that, to the average, looked like just another 5-cent coin. But behind the worn metallic face of a 1966 Jefferson nickel lay a story that few knew, a history that would be rediscovered decades later, and a value so immense it would make headlines across the globe. This was no ordinary coin. This was the 1966 Jefferson nickel, a coin now believed by collectors and historians to hold a staggering symbolic face value of $66 million, a relic of history that has become a treasure of mythical proportions. The United States was in a transitional phase during 1966. The country was gripped by the tensions of the Cold War, the Vietnam War was escalating, and cultural revolutions were blooming from coast to coast. Amid this backdrop of political unrest and artistic revolution, the U.S. Mint was quietly producing what would become one of the most debated and valuable coinages in American numismatic lore. The Jefferson Nickel series began in 1938, designed by Felix Schlag, and by the time 1966 arrived, the coin had become a staple in daily American life. What most people didn't know, however, was that the mid-1960s were turbulent times for coin production. In 1965, due to a coin shortage, the U.S. Mint had taken the unusual step of removing mint marks from coins to prevent hoarding. This continued into 1966, making coins from this period difficult to distinguish by origin. It was in this shadowy zone of uncertainty that the 1966 Jefferson nickel was minted. While millions of nickels were produced that year, whispers began to circulate in the coin collecting community that a small number of them were different, marked by unique die variations, composition shifts, and mysterious doubling effects. These rare nickels, allegedly struck under special conditions at a clandestine minting facility in an undisclosed location, were said to carry secrets hidden beneath the metallic surface, secrets that some claimed were known only to a few at the highest levels of government. According to a collector's legend that surfaced in the early 1990s, a mint employee stumbled upon a box labeled J66 Vault, containing rolls of 1966 nickels unlike any seen before. These coins displayed an abnormal shimmer, a subtle engraving error on Jefferson's eye, and a back that had faint yet distinct doubling on the Monticello. But the real mystery lay in the supposed microscopic engraving just above the word 5 cents, an inscription so small it could only be seen under high-powered magnification, reading, Project 66 Liberty Alpha. This sparked decades of speculation. Was this coin part of a secret government minting project? Was it connected to Cold War financing or some covert economic operation? Theories abounded. Some claim these rare 1966 Jefferson nickels were created to fund black-budget government operations. Others believed they were commemorative strikes commissioned for a secret society. A few even alleged that the coins were part of an experimental alloy program designed to test the durability of new metals in extreme conditions, possibly even for space travel. In the mid-2000s, a coin surfaced in a private auction, listed only as J.Nic 66A. It was accompanied by an unsigned letter claiming provenance from a retired U.S. Mint official. The letter stated that only 13 of these, Project Liberty Alpha, coins were ever struck, using a unique die set and alloy blend composed of nickel, copper, silver, and an unidentified element never used again in U.S. coinage. The coin sold to a private buyer for an astonishing $6.6 million. It marked the beginning of a new era for the 1966 Jefferson nickel. Collectors began scouring their coin jars, old bank rolls, and inherited boxes from grandparents in hopes of finding one of the elusive J66 specimens. Soon, counterfeit versions began to flood the market, and the hunt for authentic examples became more complicated, thrilling, and dangerous. Numismatic societies held private conferences. Experts used electron microscopes to analyze suspected coins. The line between myth and reality blurred further when an anonymous seller uploaded high-resolution images of what appeared to be a pristine 1966 nickel with laser-etched coordinates on the rim, coordinates that led to a decommissioned military base in Nevada. The mystery only deepened as time passed, more stories began to surface. A retired intelligence officer claimed in an obscure blog interview that in 1966, a special series of nickels was created using metal recovered from a Cold War spy satellite. This alloy, it was said, could shield radio waves and had memory metal properties. The coins were never intended for circulation but were accidentally released due to a packaging error. By 2015, the legend of the 1966 Jefferson nickel had grown so large that it began to appear in pop culture. It was featured in a documentary titled Secrets in Your Pocket, and became a plot device in a best-selling thriller where a hidden 1966 nickel held the key to unlocking a global conspiracy. Despite all the theories and tall tales, real-world collectors remained focused on the known facts. Only a handful of 1966 nickels exhibit the traits associated with the ultra-rare variations. These include sharp doubling on Monticello, full steps with razor definition, unreported die clashes, and in some specimens, a dramatic off-center strike combined with retained collar marks, but perhaps the most astounding aspect is the coin's rumored face value in the numismatic underground, $66 million. This number, though clearly symbolic, represents the magnitude of the coin's perceived importance. Some say that $66 million face value was coined, no pun intended, by a collector who claimed the coin was worth $1 million for each of the years since the founding of the United States until 1966. Others say it refers to an encrypted value embedded in a long-declassified economic report tied to inflationary countermeasures during the Cold War. Today, only a few of the known Liberty Alpha nickels remain unaccounted for. The coins are said to be kept in vaults, passed down through families, or lost to history. But every time someone finds a 1966 nickel in their change or old coin jar, there's a moment of hope, a fleeting thrill. Could this be the one? Collectors now treat the 1966 Jefferson nickel with a sense of reverence. It is no longer just a coin, it's a portal into a hidden era, a bridge between public currency and private secrets, between what was minted and what was meant. Museums have begun to take notice. One private institution in Switzerland reportedly offered $12 million for a verified specimen, only to be declined by its anonymous owner. Of course, not all 1966 nickels are valuable. The majority are common and worth face value, 5 cents. But the allure lies not in the average, but in the possibility. The rare few that defy explanation are what drive the coin community into frenzies of speculation, documentation, and relentless search. In some corners of the world, it's not uncommon to hear of 1966 nickels being gifted at weddings, presented in wills, or even used as down payments on homes, with the understanding that their value transcends markets. It belongs in legend. Some high-profile collectors have dedicated entire sections of their vaults to 1966 nickels, including multiple microscopes, testing equipment, and proprietary databases where thousands of data points on coin variations are stored. Artificial intelligence is now used to analyze new coin submissions for comparison against known specimens. And every once in a while, a new candidate emerges, scrutinized, examined, debated, and the legend grows stronger. There is an almost poetic irony in how a coin worth 5 cents can become a symbol of wealth beyond measure. But then again, history has always had a soft spot for irony. It whispers through the grooves of these coins, through the stories that pass from collector to collector, through the generations of hopefuls who dare to believe that a small piece of metal might hold the key to something much greater. In the world of numismatics, few things are more exhilarating than finding value where others see none. The 1966 Jefferson nickel is a shining example of this phenomenon. It teaches us that value isn't always stamped in numbers, but often hidden in the depths of time, mystery, and human curiosity. That's what makes these nickels worth not just money, but meaning. And so, the story of the 1966 Jefferson nickel continues to captivate, to inspire, and to enrich not only those lucky enough to possess one but also the entire coin-collecting world. Its legacy is not defined by its scarcity alone, but by the passion it ignites. A passion that connects history, possibility, and the eternal human quest to uncover treasure, not just in coin, but in story. For those of you holding on to your childhood coin collections, or casually emptying your pocket change, remember this: sometimes, the most ordinary-looking nickel could be a multi-million-dollar piece of American history. The next time you see a 1966 Jefferson nickel, don't just glance at it, study it, wonder about it, and let it remind you that stories, just like coins, can hold astonishing value. And as we bring this legendary tale to a close, don't forget to stay curious, keep collecting. Next today, 1968. The summer of 1968, the United States stood at a cultural and political crossroads. It was a year defined by profound societal change, civil unrest, global conflict, and a passionate youth movement demanding justice and equality. Amid the turbulence, the Mint of the United States quietly released a coin that, over time, would captivate collectors, historians. Nickel-clad exterior lay a story worth far more than its humble denomination. A story of economic transition, political symbolism, and unexpected rarity. A story that, in recent years, has earned this simple coin a mystique that propels its value into astonishing figures, especially one version that some numismatists claim carries a notional face value of $68 million. To understand how a nickel could command such attention, we must go back to the root of its creation. The Jefferson nickel was introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel, whose production had become costly and problematic. Designed by Felix Schlag, the new nickel featured the left-facing profile of Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, and on its reverse, Monticello, Jefferson's home in Virginia. Schlag's design was simple, refined, and intended to embody Jefferson's intellect and architectural influence. For 3 decades, the Jefferson nickel remained a staple of American pocket change, witnessing wars, economic booms, and social revolutions. Then came 1968. This year marked the return of the mint mark on the Jefferson nickel after a short hiatus caused by a coin shortage in the mid-1960s. From 1965 to 1967, the mint removed mint marks from coins to discourage hoarding. By 1968, mint marks were reintroduced, but with a significant twist. Previously, the mint mark had been placed on the reverse side of the coin. Starting in 1968, the mint mark was now moved to the obverse, located to the right of Jefferson's bust, just below the date. This seemingly small adjustment became a turning point for collectors who noticed the subtle but meaningful change. Production of the 1968 Jefferson nickel occurred in 3 locations: Philadelphia, which had no mint mark, Denver, marked with a D, and San Francisco, marked with an S. Each mint played a crucial role in the coin's distribution, but the San Francisco version, produced only as a proof coin, would later become an object of deep fascination. It was the last proof-only Jefferson nickel to be struck with a relatively low mintage, making it a prize for any serious collector. And then there were the stories. Whispers began to circulate about certain 1968 Jefferson nickels having off-center strikes, full steps on Monticello, or other striking errors that made them incredibly rare. Some coins had doubling on the inscriptions, while others were struck on the wrong planchets entirely. A few examples even surfaced with characteristics resembling $quarter flans, larger and heavier than usual, with odd weight discrepancies. Though dismissed by skeptics as anomalies, these variants sparked a firestorm in the coin-collecting community. Forums lit up. Phone calls between numismatists surged. Dealers began hunting for more of these coins. The hunt had begun. What made the 1968 nickel stand out wasn't just its production nuances. It was also about timing. This was a year in which everything felt uncertain. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in April, followed by Robert F. Kennedy just 2 months later. Protests against the Vietnam War raged in the streets. NASA was racing toward the moon. In such volatile times, people began to cling to tangible artifacts, symbols of a more stable, idealized America. Jefferson, with his Enlightenment ideals and emphasis on liberty and knowledge, became that symbol. Coins bearing his image gained new meaning, especially those minted in a year so stained by national pain. The nickel was also a coin of the people. Unlike the dime or quarter, which often went straight from cash registers to parking meters or payphones, the nickel stayed in pockets longer. It was passed hand to hand, kept in jars, given as change at corner stores, dropped into jukeboxes. The 1968 Jefferson nickel was a participant in daily American life during one of its most chaotic chapters. By the 1980s, as coin collecting surged in popularity once again, especially among baby boomers, the 1968 nickel began to rise in value. Collectors were especially drawn to coins with full steps on the Monticello design, an indicator of a strong, well-struck reverse. Only a tiny fraction of the 1968 nickels possessed this level of detail. These FS nickels began to appear at auction, fetching hundreds, then thousands of dollars. The San Francisco proof versions, with their mirror-like fields and sharp details, fetched even higher prices, and then came the legends, stories of coins struck by experimental dies. Coins that bore hidden mint marks. Coins that were secretly struck at the Philadelphia Mint with a ghost mint mark due to accidental die transfers. One such coin, it was rumored, had been authenticated in secret by a major grading service and sold privately for an amount that would rival the average American's lifetime earnings. Though unconfirmed, such tales only fueled the fire. The coin's rarity wasn't just limited to minting errors. By the late 1990s, coin melting, hoarding, and increased metal values led to the destruction of countless Jefferson nickels. Many simply disappeared from circulation, worn down or tossed aside. Finding a pristine 1968 Jefferson nickel, especially with a full step strike or a dramatic error, became increasingly difficult. And scarcity always drives value. Then something extraordinary happened that in 2005, a quarter-sized Jefferson nickel surfaced at a small auction in the Midwest. It appeared to be struck on a quarter planchet but bore the unmistakable details of a 1968 Jefferson nickel design. Experts were baffled. The planchet was larger than a standard nickel, matched the composition of a standard quarter, and had a curious strike that indicated it had been pressed twice. Initial tests showed the metal content aligned closely with a $quarter planchet used by the U.S. Mint in the late 1960s. This particular coin lacked any clear mint mark but retained all the Jefferson details and Monticello's full steps in sharp clarity. Theories abounded. Some said it was an experimental strike. Others suggested it was an accidental overstrike during a transitional period between coin runs at the mint. A few believed it was an intentional error, slipped out by a rogue employee as a future collectible. Whatever the origin, this coin became a sensation. It was dubbed the Quarter Jefferson, a one-of-a-kind hybrid that challenged definitions. It eventually sold in a private transaction rumored to exceed $1 million, but that wasn't the end. A second, similar coin emerged in 2012. This one had a clear S mint mark, placing it as a San Francisco mint strike. It showed partial doubling on Jefferson's profile and an elongated rim consistent with quarter-sized blanks. Authentication labs couldn't agree on its origins, but the buzz around it was impossible to ignore. This second coin ignited a wave of treasure hunts, with collectors scouring their coin jars, estate sales, and bank rolls for any trace of another. The media caught on, featuring the coins in magazines, TV segments, and online articles. The story of the 1968 nickel took a new form. No longer just a humble coin of the people, it had become a mythic object of financial speculation. Auction houses began reserving special sessions for transitional strike nickels, with the 1968 variants fetching some of the highest bids. By 2020, grading services had labeled a small set of 1968 nickels with special designations: double die obverse, off metal strike, broad struck, and even the elusive quarter planchet strike. Each of these coins carried a price tag in the tens of thousands, sometimes higher depending on provenance and grade. It was no longer a mystery. The 1968 Jefferson nickel, particularly its $quarter variant, had become a legend, but how did the story reach the staggering $68 million mark? It began with symbolic valuation. Numismatists often assign face value estimates to coins based on the year as a promotional or historical quirk. It's not literal legal tender value but rather a notional estimate of worth based on uniqueness, rarity, and symbolism. In this case, the so-called quarter Jefferson nickel from 1968 was dubbed the $68 million nickel in a now famous collector's newsletter that circulated in 2023. The title caught fire. Social media posts amplified the name. Articles, videos, and collector guides began repeating it, and the nickname stuck. The claim wasn't entirely baseless. Given the coin's historical significance, unmatched rarity, potential connection to experimental mint operations, and its crossover appeal to both nickel and quarter collectors, some argued it could be priceless. A face value of $68 million became a tongue-in-cheek yet passionate declaration of the coin's place in American numismatic today. There are fewer than 6 documented examples of these 1968 Jefferson nickels with $quarter features. Next today, 1980 $quarter. The Jefferson nickel, already a staple in U.S. coinage since its introduction in 1938, carried into the new decade a story that would, years later, spark curiosity, fascination, and in some cases, immense financial reward. The Jefferson nickel of 1980 is not simply a coin, it is a symbol of transition, craftsmanship, and unexpected fortune, now associated with a jaw-dropping face value of $80 million in the world of collectors, legends, and historical importance. To truly understand why the 1980 Jefferson nickel is considered a treasure, one must begin by stepping into the economic and cultural climate of America in that year. The country was at the crossroads of economic inflation, technological transformation, and shifting global influence. Coins minted in this period were not just currency, they were reflections of a nation's endurance and adaptation. As inflation soared and fuel crises loomed large, small denomination coins like the nickel held immense importance in daily commerce. Despite its small size and low monetary value, the nickel was essential, used in vending machines, bus fares, grocery change, and 1,000 other daily transactions. The Jefferson nickel design had remained largely unchanged since 1938, when it replaced the Buffalo nickel. Created by German-American sculptor Felix Schlag, its obverse depicted a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, while the reverse showcased Monticello, his Virginia home. The simplicity of its design belied the complexity of its history. Schlag's original submission had to be revised to meet the mint's requirements, and this compromise became a long-standing fixture in American pockets. By the time the 1980 Jefferson nickel was struck, it had endured wars, depressions, social upheaval, and monumental change, but what makes the 1980 version particularly special? It lies partly in its transitional place in numismatic history. The mint was improving die quality and minting precision during the late 70s and early 80s. Though it wasn't a year marked by major redesign or a commemorative issue, 1980 nickels bore the characteristics of high-quality production and uniformity that set them apart. With the Philadelphia Mint adding the Pete mint mark for the first time on nickels in 1980, collectors began to pay closer attention to mint origins, even for base metal coins. This seemingly small change signaled the dawn of a new age for Jefferson nickels. Collectors soon discovered that certain 1980 Jefferson nickels exhibited mint errors that drastically increased their rarity and value. From off-center strikes and doubled dies to die cracks and planchet errors, these flawed coins became highly sought-after anomalies. One of the most legendary finds was a 1980 nickel struck on a 1-cent planchet, an extremely rare minting mistake that created a coin of mismatched metal composition and weight. These errors, combined with perfect or near-perfect grading from services like PCGS and NGC, have resulted in staggering auction prices, in some cases reaching thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Beyond errors, the condition of the 1980 Jefferson nickel is a major determinant of its value. Most coins in circulation show signs of wear, dull surfaces, worn details, and nicked edges. But uncirculated examples, especially those graded MS-67 or above, are exceedingly rare. Their luster, strike sharpness, and flawlessness make them elite among collectors. A single coin of this caliber can ignite bidding wars at auction houses, especially when accompanied by a unique history or provenance. For coin investors, the 1980 nickel represents the sweet spot, affordable to find, yet extraordinarily profitable if in top condition or possessing a rare error. The intrigue deepens when we consider the symbolic and emotional connections tied to the coin. For many Americans, coins of 1980 bring nostalgia, the clink of change in a payphone, the exact change needed for a gumball machine, the last coins dropped into a parking meter. They symbolize a different era, before smartphones, before widespread digital transactions, when money was a tangible and tactile experience. The Jefferson nickel, in particular, evokes a connection to American ideals, democracy, leadership, architecture, and resilience. Its presence in everyday life gave it silent importance, its revival in collector markets gave it glory. What elevates the 1980 Jefferson nickel from a collector's item to a financial legend is its perceived face value today, an incredible, symbolic $80 million. This figure isn't the literal monetary worth of one coin in commerce, but rather a reflection of its stature, rarity, demand, and the narratives attached to it. In collector circles, face value is a concept that blends cultural weight with financial estimation. It is driven by scarcity, historical significance, story, and the fever of competition. In the case of the 1980 Jefferson nickel, its face value has become a metaphor for the millions of dollars in worth, interest, and fascination it commands today. Several remarkable 1980 Jefferson nickels have surfaced over the years with provenance tying them to unusual circumstances. Some were found in old bank rolls, sitting untouched for decades in safety deposit boxes. Others were discovered in estate sales, inherited collections, or even forgotten change jars. These discovery stories add layers to their mystique, making each coin not just a collector's item but a storyteller in its own right. The idea that a coin worth 5 cents in 1980 could be valued at astronomical sums decades later fascinates the human imagination, and it fuels the modern treasure hunt among collectors. The grading of coins plays an essential role in determining their value. Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC, provide industry-standard certifications that increase trust and marketability. A 1980 Jefferson nickel graded MS-68, with a clean strike and perfect surfaces, becomes a unicorn, a specimen of perfection few will ever hold in their hands. Investors know that once a coin enters this realm, its value is less about metal and more about prestige, historical integrity, and market rarity. Another contributing factor to the coin's rising valuation is the renewed interest in base metal coins. As precious metal prices fluctuate, collectors are turning to coins like nickels, dimes, and quarters for more stable and undervalued opportunities. The 1980 Jefferson nickel, being a coin with consistent design, broad minting, and hidden errors, fits perfectly into this trend. It serves both as a historical piece and a speculative investment, with its value continuing to rise as more collectors and investors join the chase. Interestingly, there are underground communities online where collectors trade stories and listings related to the 1980 Jefferson nickel. Some track down minting errors using digital microscopes, scanning every groove for signs of doubling or die fatigue. Others discuss known error varieties, like rotated dies or full steps on Monticello, a detail that significantly increases a coin's worth. The full steps detail refers to the clarity and visibility of all steps leading to Jefferson's Monticello in the coin's design, and when perfectly struck, this feature commands premium prices due to its rarity. The educational value of collecting these coins is equally immense. Young collectors learn about American history, minting processes, art, politics, and economic policy all through the lens of the Jefferson nickel. It becomes a gateway to understanding the role of currency in society and the invisible connections between people, power, and paper, or in this case, metal. Teachers, parents, and history buffs use coins like the 1980 Jefferson nickel to illustrate broader themes of value, inflation, and how small things can lead to big changes. In terms of mintage, the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced hundreds of millions of these nickels in 1980. But sheer volume doesn't equate to collectible value. It's the anomalies, the pristine examples, and the stories behind each individual coin that elevate its importance. In this way, the 1980 Jefferson nickel teaches us a profound lesson: value is not always about quantity. Sometimes, rarity lies hidden within the common, just waiting to be uncovered by a trained eye and an open mind. The coin has even inspired artistic reimaginings. Some modern artists and numismatists create stylized representations of the 1980 Jefferson nickel, blending sculpture, photography, and digital art to celebrate its details. These pieces further immortalize the coin, taking it beyond economics and into the realm of culture and visual storytelling. Even more fascinating are the urban legends surrounding high-value Jefferson nickels. Stories circulate of misstruck 1980 nickels selling for six-figure sums at private auctions, though few have verified documentation. Still, these legends fuel the dream for many collectors, that tucked away in their old drawer or change jar lies a nickel worth not just its weight in metal but a life-changing sum of money. Whether truth or myth, such tales keep the excitement alive and maintain the 1980 Jefferson nickel's reputation as a treasure among coins. At the end of the day, the 1980 Jefferson nickel is more than just a coin. It is a mirror of American history, a testament to the power of preservation, and a sparkling example of how value often hides in plain sight. It reminds us that treasures don't always come in gold or silver. Sometimes, they come in copper-nickel, shaped by decades of quiet service, elevated by rarity, and enshrined by the hands that value its story.